They said he was coming from Texas, all fire and brimstone with a heart for broken men. I wasn't sure which I was. The town of Merrow's Fold wasn't exactly the kind of place you pass through. We had one gas station, a diner called Maze, and a chapel older than the storm cellar behind it. We didn't get strangers often, especially not ones like him. He arrived late Friday evening, right before the revival weekend was set to start. I had just finished sweeping out the church porch when the white Ford pulled in, dust spiraling behind it like a ribbon of warning. And then he stepped out. Linen shirt, neatly rolled sleeves, leather-bound Bible tucked under one arm. Sharp, calm eyes the color of mountain stone after a rain. He wasn't loud. Didn't need to be. "Evening," he said, extending a hand that was strong and sun-browned, the veins faintly raised like the roots of a prayer. I took it. "Ephraim Nash," I replied. "I help out around here." He smiled, soft and unreadable. "Preacher Callum Greer. Thank you for receiving me." His voice was deep, measured. Like he didn't just speak scripture, he carried it. Something in me buckled a little. It had been years since I let a man's voice settle beneath my skin like that. If you're already feeling the tension building in this quiet little town, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment with where you're watching from. We want to know what pew of the world you're sitting in when love starts to rise like a hymn in your chest. Trust me, this story's going somewhere, and we don't want you missing a single beat. We showed him the guest room behind the chapel, the old parsonage, dusty but clean. He took it in silently, his gaze flicking over the simple cot, the faded curtains, the oil lamp we'd left lit on the bedside table. "It'll do," he said, setting his Bible down like he was laying something heavy to rest. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the feel of his hand in mine, the quiet authority in his gaze, the way he'd looked at me for 1 second too long before he turned away. Not judgment, not fear, just knowing. The revival was fire. Callum didn't preach so much as bleed truth. His sermons were all low thunder and soft mercy, the kind of words that made grown men cry into their sleeves. He spoke about wilderness, about wrestling angels, about how God uses brokenness to bend us into grace. But I wasn't listening for the message. I was watching the messenger. Every time he stepped down from the pulpit, his eyes flicked to me. Once, twice, each glance like a match dragged across dry wood. We never talked long, just quiet exchanges after service, as the crowd filtered out beneath the willow trees. He called me Brother Ephraim. I called him man of God. And one night, when I offered him a ride back to the parsonage after prayer circle, he said it soft, almost like a confession. "I don't sleep much." "Why not?" I asked. He looked straight ahead. "Sometimes holiness keeps me up. Other times, it's what I don't ask for that stirs." I didn't press. I didn't have to. The next night, he didn't preach. Just sat beside me on the chapel steps, watching the stars edge across the sky. And then, after a long silence, he said, "You look like you've carried a secret longer than it deserved to be hidden." I didn't breathe. His hand brushed mine just barely. Just once. But I felt it in my knees. "You don't know me," I whispered. "I don't need to," he replied. "I know what longing sounds like when it stays caged." He stood then. "Good night, brother." But his voice lingered like an open door. It was the 4th night when it broke. After the revival crowd had gone. After the hymnals were stacked and the candles snuffed. I came into the chapel to lock up, only to find him still there, hands folded on the altar, head bowed, whispering something I couldn't quite hear. I watched from the doorway. Something about the curve of his back, the way his breath caught, the way the moonlight brushed across his collarbone, it undid me. I stepped forward. Quiet. He didn't turn. I said his name once. "Callum." And he turned to me slowly, not startled, like he'd been waiting for me to say it all along. "You shouldn't be here," he said. But he didn't mean it. I walked to the altar. He stood. We stared. And then he said it. Low. Unshaken. "Say it again." "What?" "My name. Say it like you mean it." "Callum." And when I did, his hand came to my jaw. thumb brushing the corner of my mouth like he was wiping off fear. Then his lips met mine, not in heat, not in frenzy, but in relief. It was like breathing after drowning. The first time I touched his bare back, he shivered. The first time he whispered "Daddy" into the crook of my neck, I forgot to breathe. It wasn't about roles or games. It was about surrender, about choosing who got to hold your name in their mouth like it meant something sacred. I held him like he might fall apart. He clung like I was the first solid ground he'd felt in years. There was no sin in it, just skin and heartbeat, and two men no longer willing to lie to themselves. When he curled up against me, he said it again. Sleepy, honest. I called you Daddy because I needed someone to hold the weight of me without flinching. I kissed his temple. And I called you Man of God because you were the only one I ever wanted to kneel for. The morning after happened, I expected to feel shame. I've been raised on sermons that taught men like me to bury softness beneath duty, to quiet desire with scripture, to choose loneliness over touch. But when I woke with Callum's breath warming the back of my neck and his arm curled tight around my waist, I didn't feel sinful. I felt held. The parsonage window let in a sliver of sun, catching the gold strands in his hair. He was still asleep, lips slightly parted, lashes curled. That peaceful slack in his jaw like he'd finally let something go. I turned gently, not wanting to wake him. But he stirred anyway, blinking slow, then smiling like a secret just for me. You stayed, he murmured, voice raspy with sleep. Yeah. He tucked his head under my chin, fingers tracing lines along my spine. Is it wrong that I don't want to move? That I want to stay here like this forever? No, I said. It's the first right thing we've done. We didn't talk about the world outside those four walls. Not yet. Not the chapel. Not the church mothers with knowing eyes. Not the town. Just skin on skin. Hands in hair. A kiss to the hollow of my throat. His voice, hoarse and reverent. Ephraim, I never wanted to want anyone the way I want you. But I do. And when he whispered Daddy again, this time like it was a vow, I answered with everything in me. I've got you, baby. You're mine. We made love slow, like a prayer. Not frantic, not hungry, just patient, pulsing honesty. With every brush of his thigh against mine, every gasped breath against my collarbone, I felt something unlock. He didn't look away. He watched me, kissed me like he was learning how to stay, gripped my hand like I was the answer to every sleepless night he'd ever had. After, we lay tangled in the sheets, quiet and undone. There were no confessions, just a truth between us that didn't need words anymore. Only heartbeat, only heat. You'd think the hard part would be the first touch, the first kiss. But the real test came in daylight. That afternoon, Callum stepped into the chapel to lead his final sermon, the collar buttoned, the fire hidden behind his calm, steel eyes. I watched him from the side aisle, heart hammering. Would he speak of love, of mercy? Or would he tuck us back in his silence, for the sake of keeping peace? He stood behind the pulpit, his fingers white-knuckled on the wood. Then, slow and sure, he pulled off his clerical collar, held it in both hands, and said, There are two things I've learned since coming to Marrow's fold. 1, God doesn't punish desire. He punishes dishonesty. And 2, love, when it is patient, kind, and without fear, is never a sin. Murmurs filled the chapel. A creak of a pew. Someone coughed. But he didn't stop. I have loved in secret, but no more. I have laid hands on scripture and stone. And now, I lay my heart at the feet of the one who taught me how to stand still long enough to be known. And then, he looked at me. Didn't blink. Didn't hide. His name is Ephraim Nash. And I don't just want to preach about love. I want to live it. My hand shook, but I stood, walked to the front of that chapel, and took his hand in mine. There were no shouts, no applause, just a few nods, a few tears, and the weight of 100 years of silence breaking beneath our joined palms. That night, he came to my house, not in secret, not afraid. He walked in like he was always meant to belong there, like the quiet porch and a rocking chair and my rough carpenter hand were always supposed to be his home. We sat in the kitchen under low light, knees touching, fingers laced. And when he pulled me into him, slow, firm, certain, he whispered it again against my mouth. You hold me like God never left. And I answered, because he didn't. We kissed. Then again. Then again. And in the hush between breaths, he moaned into my chest, low, reverent, and said it. Daddy, don't let go. I never would. It's been a year. Callum still keeps a Bible on the nightstand. I still fix pews and fences. Some people left the chapel after that Sunday, but most stayed because love, when lived out loud, makes room for others to do the same. We host dinners now, real ones. Big meals with sweet tea, cornbread, and laughter echoing off porch rails. And every once in a while, someone asks us how we met. He just smiles and says, he called me man of God. And I say, he called me daddy. And the way he still looks at me after all this time, it's how every gospel should end.